couple of the speakers aren't here yet. Here comes Reverend Connors. Yes, please. Up front. I'm glad they don't have to fight over the microphones, and don't all talk at once. We have a nice group of questions here. I don't know that we'll even be able to get through them in the time that we have allotted, but we'll see. Still a few people coming in. We'll wait another half a minute. While you're waiting, there were some who questioned the bus tour details. The bus will leave here at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. It's going to take approximately 2 hours. That will depend a little bit on those of you who are in the bus, I suppose. You're going to take majority vote, Kamiga, as to where they want to stay, how long. Are you going on the bus tour? I am. He is. All right. And the bus will return here. So it leaves here at 1 p.m., it's approximately 2 hours, and it will come back here. Southwest Church also asked me to remind you about the CDs and the DVDs. There's an order form on the website, which website is on the back of the brochure. There are extra brochures if you'd like to take any for a souvenir or give to any friends who maybe haven't seen it. They said you are welcome to do that too. But if you go on the website, you will be able to order the CDs and the DVDs there as well. Okay, let's be on to the questions. Somebody said in the back of the church, we don't call attention to ourselves, but now we have to. Pastor Key has to drive 12 and more hours right now to get back to Iowa and preach tomorrow. We are going to give him the first couple of questions, and then graciously he's going to leave, and we thank him for being here. First question to Reverend Key: does not such a physician become a butcher? That was one of the quotes in your speech. Does not such a physician become a butcher? Could you please repeat that one fully and explain the connection a little more?
I do not have the quote. I have the reference to the quote. If the one asking the question wants to take note of it, it comes from Calvin's sermons on the epistles to Timothy and Titus, and that's a facsimile of the 1579 edition published by the Banner Truth Trust. And the reference is found on page 802. As I mentioned in the speech, that's a sermon on 2 Timothy 2, verses 14 and 15. The text that speaks of the workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. In that reference, Calvin pointed out the natural inclination of the people of God not to want to hear what is necessary for them. And as he addressed that folly of the natural man, he called attention to the calling of the minister over against such folly, and likened that to a doctor who listens to his patient say, "Well, Doc, I have these symptoms, but I know it can't be cancer." So the doctor simply gives the patient an aspirin, tells him what he wants to hear, "You're right, it's not cancer," and sends him home. That's the context in which he says, "And is such a physician not then his butcher?" but the full quote you can read in that reference that I gave.
Thank you. The next question, Reverend Key, comes from someone in your congregation, I dare guess. If pastors ought to have a long view of the church's spiritual growth, does not this necessitate a pastor's lengthy stay at his local congregation? If not, why haven't you taken a call? No, that's not on here.
Well, over 9 years already. That certainly is one perspective, but certainly not the only perspective in a minister considering calls. One of the blessings that we enjoy as Protestant Reformed churches is that there is unity of doctrine, oneness in the preaching, so that when it's time for me to leave the congregation where God has called me for some time, I can leave in the confidence that the man who follows me is going to preach the same truth that I have been preaching. That's a tremendous blessing. That's a blessing that we enjoy as Protestant Reformed churches. And that's quite unique in the church world today. I think the point of that reference was the fact that the minister must not expect instant change in the lives of God's people. The ministry becomes very frustrating if you don't have a long view of preaching, because God works in us over time. Just as a child grows, and as parents we see that child grow very quickly, nevertheless, from a child's point of view, that growth comes slowly. And the same analogy holds for the spiritual lives of God's people. So we must be faithful. We must consistently set forth God's truth. And then over time, we sit back and we look with wonder at what God has done in strengthening his church. And to God be the glory.
Reverend Key, Godspeed on your travels.
Thank you.
You'll
I'm
be
sorry
home.
I have to miss the rest of the questions. I thoroughly enjoyed the conference. But there's a congregation that wants pulpit supply tomorrow in northwest Iowa. So,
If you leave now, you'll be home before midnight.
yes, Lord willing.
Nancy, drive safely.
Thank you.
How did John Calvin accomplish so much in his short lifespan? Good question. I can take